The Moran case, I guess, is similar, except the difference is 10, 20, 1993, 2003, 25 years later. The Morans had court-appointed counsel in Seattle, Washington. They were charged with 64 counts of filing offshore, helping people file incorrect offshore tax shelters. And nobody has won a clean sweep since New York in 1963 of these type of tax counts. Nobody had ever won a clean sweep. And the Morans, the people they worked for, the people that bought the product, and everybody else had been convicted. 100% conviction rate was the largest rate in United States history. And they were convicted in 2004. They fired their court-appointed attorney who didn't put their story on to the jury, who thought it was fine when the judge says you don't need to hear these things. They're confusing. That's the problem with these judges when they don't understand their place in the Constitution, the constitutional society. They don't believe in the jury. They believe, like the firefighters, that the jury doesn't exist anymore, that they're just there to worship the judges. The pleadings in, they say, wherefore premises we pray. I may be the only law office in the United States that doesn't pray to judges. I don't use that form, wherefore premises, which means premises means because of what I've already written. I put wherefore we ask, because I don't want to pray to the judges. I think that's sacrilegious. And very rarely do they say anything about, well, no judge has ever said, how come you didn't pray to me in your petition? How do you get to be a judge? How do you get to decide when the jury's too stupid to hear things? How does that happen? Well, as Americans, we don't know anything until we read it in one of the major monopolies that does polls. So these major monopolies that poll us have told us that we don't like lawyers. Y'all don't trust lawyers. If y'all were in the corner of the airport asking where this camp was and having trouble finding it, which some people had trouble finding it, and you saw a lawyer on the corner, you wouldn't want to ask him directions because you'd be afraid, one, he'd lie to you, and two, he'd charge you for it. Y'all don't trust lawyers. Part of the reason is we've had too many untrustworthy lawyers in this country. The 95% of the crooked lawyers give the other 5% of us a bad name. The jury trial is dying. It is going the way of the dinosaur because people don't care for it anymore. It's inconvenient. It gets in the way. So if you don't trust someone, who do you trust less than lawyers? Perhaps y'all aren't reading the mainstream papers. I have to in order to try cases in front of juries. I have to know what they're thinking. So here's who you trust less than lawyers. Lawyers aren't at the bottom. They're not even at the next to bottom. The next to bottom, right underneath lawyers, is politicians. You trust politicians less than you trust lawyers. So if you're trying to get down here because you want to hear Red Beckman speak, or you want to hear any of the other great speakers here, and you're worried you're going to miss it, and there's two people on the corner downtown Sturges, and one of them's a lawyer and one of them's a politician, at the last minute after you spent the money on gas and filled up your car so that you can enrich the people that blew up New York so that they can have enough money for their next set of plans, you'd ask the lawyer over the politician. You'd trust him more than the politician, and you'd go ahead and pay him. It would hurt, but what's your fee, sir, for these directions? You'd pay him, he'd give you the directions. And you do that because you so much distrust the politician. Now, at the very top of the list, we have teachers, and I used to be a high school English teacher. Boxers, I used to be a boxer. They're not on the list. I feel that's a discrimination. I wouldn't have gotten on the list if I hadn't taught and practiced law. I wouldn't even be on the list of worthy enough to be judged whether or not I could be trusted. But I snuck in on those two categories. At the top of the list, the people that our friends and neighbors trust the most are judges. They're at the top of the list. They wear black robes, they sit up on thrones, and they look down on us. And they want us to pray to them. And they want the jurors not to hear what's going on. And I say this again, I hate to pick on the 5% of great judges who are out there who believe in the jury system, who believe in it, who believe that common man has more sense than the BS that they cram into you when you're being propagandized. But those 95% of the judges give those 5% of the judges a bad name. So how do we pick the judge, the top of the line, the font of all wisdom, who we will worship and who we will listen to, more than the witnesses in the courtroom? How do we pick them? Well, they're a combination of a failed lawyer and a failed politician. So you put two negatives together, a bad lawyer and a bad politician, and it's supposed to turn into the great positive, a judge. And I was not a math teacher, so that never made any sense to me. I was an English teacher. And I was a boxer. In both of those professions, it was my job to put people to sleep. I did it in both professions.